it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I am so excited to introduce you to somebody I've had the honor and the pleasure to get to know. And I'm truly, every time I jump on a phone or a Zoom with Karen Laos, it's always enlightening. She's a communication expert and confidence cultivator, which I just love the phrase. She has leveraged 25 years in the boardroom and speaking on the world's most coveted stages, including Google, NASA, and actually just Karen and I were talking from her car recently, and you're about to go speak for the National Conference of Women in Banking.
Yes.
Karen, welcome. Thanks for joining me here.
Thank you. Yes, I love how we can do business in all of these places that I would have never thought to do before COVID.
So let's, I know, and we were just laughing. I was like, where are you? She's like, in the car, can't you see? I'm like, yeah, but like, where are you? Let's go into the background a little bit. You've spent 25 years, you've conquered boardrooms. Share a little bit about your background so we know where the basis of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have to start with something personal because I like to say I'm a follower of dreams. I'm originally from Minnesota, but I always had this dream to live in San Francisco and Manhattan. I started first in San Francisco and put a bunch of stuff in the trunk of my car, landed here and never left. And that was back in the mid 90s. And I quickly moved into an HR role, found very soon after that I loved developing people and had no idea that there's a whole career called corporate training. And so I did a lot of work with leadership development at the Gap back in the day in their corporate office. And then for 14 years, I worked for a communications company called Decker Communications. And I like to say that that's where I really grew up professionally, where I learned all the things that we need to learn about executive presence and how we come across, as well as how to deliver a message that's impactful and relevant to your audience. But my real dream is where I'm right now, like in the midst of it, which is so exciting because I left my corporate job in 2020 after 14 years of being there to focus on my mission to help women, specifically 10 million women, to overcome self-doubt and speak with confidence instead. And that is really the mission that I am on and will continue to be on, hopefully for the rest of my living days here on the planet.
So that's a pretty bold goal, reaching 10 million women in the area of confidence and self-doubt.
Yes, it is. It is something that drives me every day. And I feel like the more that, well, here's really when I think about what the power is about focus, is that's a huge thing that I learned. Because if I think back to when I decided to say, I'm going to do this on my own. That was September of 2019. And it was a specific moment because I actually put some money down for a public speaking, or not public speaking. I had been training people in public speaking, but for a group that helped women be on more stages. And this was through a woman named Jess Ekstrom. She has a group called Mic Drop Workshop. So that $1,000 that I put down was a lot of money for me at the time. And I remember thinking, okay, I am going for it. And that led me to these 3 Ds that I created as a formula, which is to decide what you want to do, declare it to everybody that you know, and put that stake in the ground, and then go do it. So that's really when I made that decision in September of 2019. And the mission itself has helped me tremendously in making all of the decisions that I do in my business. Is this thing that I'm thinking of doing? Because probably like you, Ivy, we have lots of ideas. And is this thing that I'm about to do going to help me get closer to that mission, or stay neutral or farther away from? And that's how I make those decisions.
Yeah, I have so much to say. First of all, I love those 3 questions because it helps keep us on track and it's so important. But I do also want to honor, it's not easy to walk away from a steady paycheck. It's not easy to walk away to say, if I don't do this now, when? And
That's true.
actually make it happen. And so I truly want to congratulate you because it is bold. It is scary.
Thank you. Thank you.
How did you navigate that journey? Like making that decision, because I think this could really help listeners. There's a lot of people on the cusp, and it doesn't mean everybody should leave their job, by the way.
Right.
So that's not what I'm saying. We should do what's right for us, and you should be solid in your decisions and your actions.
Well, I can tell you that for the last 2 years at my job, I was feeling pretty stuck, and I would describe myself as a racehorse behind the gates with so much energy and ready to go do something, but I could not figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And with lots of journaling, therapy, self-discovery, lots of things that you need to do to figure things out, that's when I realized I actually know what I want to do, but I have been shoving that dream in the corner for who knows why. I think part of it is that I have been I think this is applicable to everybody, that I've been quite successful when I put my mind to something and said, I'm going to do this. And I think there was a part of me that was afraid of my success, that if this was the last dream on my list professionally, what if I do this and I succeed? Will I be bored? What will I want to do next? Because I tend to get bored every couple of years. And I think there was a little bit of fear there, if I'm really honest. But the truth is, I feel like I'm still processing that. But what I can say is being able to acknowledge that stuckness and then continuing every day to do something to help me get clarity. And then once I had that discovery and I realized this is what I want to do, okay, then I felt like the floodgates were open and I was ready to go for it. Then it almost couldn't come fast enough.
So where the piece around, when you hunker yourself down and say, I'm going to make a difference, and I'm going to make a difference around confidence and self-doubt. Why confidence and self-doubt? Because I'm assuming, and I should never assume, and I own that. My first thoughts is, well, did this come from the years of corporate? What did you see? What were you navigating? What did you see in others that you hunkered down on that mission?
Yes. Well, I found myself in a boardroom one day with my peers, and I loved that company. I loved the roles that I played there. And even though I was being flown all over the world to speak on these big stages, here I was in one moment in time where I was completely tongue-tied because I had an internal conflict with something that my boss mentioned that I should present. It was very loosely mentioned to me of, hey, this would be a good thing to present. But I took that as, I better do this because my boss said so. And I grew up in a very traditional home where my dad called the shots and my mom did what he said. And so there's deeper things there as well.
It's modeling,
right. Exactly. And so what I learned is that you don't question your boss. And so I didn't question her, but the night before I can remember feeling so anxiety ridden because I thought this doesn't make sense to me. I don't really understand why we're doing this. And I'm in the boardroom, all tongue-tied over my words, to the point where she had to shut down the meeting in the most gracious and kind way, by the way. She pulled me into her office afterward and said, this was a perfect example, again, where you didn't trust your gut. You could have just said, I don't even remember why we were doing this in the first place. And when she said that, honestly, I thought, what? I couldn't believe that there was permission to do that. And I was mortified and embarrassed. The whole thing that was the pivotal moment for me where I said, I'm never going to let this happen again. And that's when, I was already on a personal growth journey, but I wasn't a young chicken then. I was in my early 40s. And I remember feeling like, why did this happen? I've got to figure this out. Because at the end of the day, and so the story really led me to my mission, I don't want any woman like I was in a prison of my own making. We all have a power to choose. We need to choose what we want and recognize that we have the power to do that. And the bigger thing for me is that when I realized the freedom that you can have, that's possible when you're not hunkered down or encumbered by a bunch of your own mindset baggage around what other people think of you. Are you going to be judged? And I don't think you can ever totally be free of self-doubt. But to me, when the freedom, the way I define that is when you're to the point where you're not dependent upon how other people feel about you or what they think about you that would cause you to stay quiet. And I stayed quiet for too long related to things that really mattered to me.
So when you are working and speaking when you're speaking to audiences, are they primarily women audiences, or are they women and male?
They're both.
Inclusive.
Yes, definitely both. I would say my focus is on women, but the concepts that I talk about are truly universal. And what I also think is interesting is that a lot of people will say, well, do you find that more women do this or that? And if you look at it statistically, most of the time, men and women do similar things. When we're thinking about communication habits, for example, or the way we use our voice and that kind of thing. But the things that are primarily focused more on women's, well, let's just put it this way. Women get the bad rap for it. I'm just going to say it. That's what ends up happening. And people don't notice the men doing it as much because there's more focus on women, or there's other things that women are doing in addition to that. And I don't like to get into too much. I feel like this is always a sticky topic, but the principles are universal. And one of the things, yeah, go ahead, Ivy.
If we can shift one thing, then if we're looking at universal, if we could shift one thing about inner confidence, what could it be?
Well, I'm going to tell you how I would recommend shifting and then go to the shifting.
Fair.
Because first of all, action is what makes a difference.
I love that you're saying that, because I so agree with you and believe the same thing. It's in the actions that we see we can move, right? We build inner confidence when we say, oh, if we think about a child, right? A child first learning to walk, they'll take that step and then possibly even just sit down right on their butt, right? And
Yes.
then they'll pull themselves back up and they'll take another step, maybe two, and then they might take a break a little bit, right? And then it's in the action that we learn to walk and then run as children.
Yes, that is such a great analogy. It's so true. And one of the things, one of the biggest things I recommend is people record themselves, and ideally watch it with someone you trust or a coach that knows what they're doing, at least on some level. But most importantly, that you can see how you come across. And I feel like when I work with my clients, because that's a big part of what I do, that when they can see themselves and then get, number one, affirmation, because we're always our own worst critics. So we're going to look at the thing that we don't like immediately. So I always almost gently force my clients to say, what did you like about what you just saw? What did you like? Let's focus on that. And that's one of the things that I highly recommend. Now, another thing specifically really looking at or thinking about mindset is to start, sometimes it helps to have external validation. And that could be simply, I call it my 5 and 5 exercise, which is to ask 5 people that you know and trust, ideally from different aspects of your life, if possible, and ask them to tell you 5 positive qualities about you. And that can help to look at themes. You don't have to receive everything that people are giving you, but the idea is to look at and start noticing and saying, what do I want to take from that? Or, wow, I never thought that was a strength, but how cool. And that can make us have more confidence to even take that next step. But that's one of several self-doubt exercises that I have. So I feel like, Ivy, I could go on and on about this. I do have one that's my favorite. Can I bring up one more?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
I call it the Broadway musical technique. And this comes from a dear friend of mine in one of her workshops, and her name is Rachel Grant. It's where you take the message of self-doubt that you say over and over again to yourself. So maybe it's something like, I'm not good enough, or who am I to be getting this client, or whatever it is. And most of the time when we say that to ourselves, or we even say it out loud, it sounds pretty sad or depressing, or just certainly not happy. So from a neuroscience perspective, the way that we can change this up in our brains is we can say that exact same phrase, but sing it like a Broadway musical. So if I were to say, I'm not good enough, it would sound pretty ridiculous all of a sudden. And that simple shifting of the brain, the message to our brain, can make a difference immediately in a message of self-doubt.
I like it. I have a terrible voice, so I can't sing it here.
Yes, we can all do this in the privacy of our own homes.
but I do like it. It's shifting by shifting the delivery, we're shifting how we see something.
Yes.
And hence how we have the potential of feeling something.
Yes, 100%.
So in shifting this topic for a moment, when you started to build this company, were there any surprises? What has surprised you in this journey?
Oh, a lot.
Loaded question, huh, Karen?
Well, the first thing that was the surprise, of course, is as I got my 2 biggest speaking gigs, then COVID happened. The good news is one of them happened in late February, and that was incredible. And so on the positive side, this is relevant to the whole theme of what I've experienced. And the thing that I will say that has really impacted me, and there's a lot of emotion around this, is that I could make a difference in people's lives. That the things that I'm doing are actually helping people to be more confident and to speak up and not hide themselves in the corner. And I would say most of my clients aren't the ones hiding themselves in the corner necessarily. They're all corporate leaders. Most people that I work with are entrepreneurs, but it's that holding ourselves back to where we're not truly expressing the greatest version of ourselves, that if I can play a role in that, that is absolutely incredible. And so lots of surprises, like I never thought I would start a podcast, and now I have almost 20,000 downloads. And
woohoo!
Yeah, thank you. I never thought that I would, well, I never thought I would write a book. I didn't think I would take it. Like, I don't know, would I really write it? I feel like I've had all of these invitations, like life just brings us invitations all the time. And if we're paying attention, why not seize those opportunities? So I feel like
actually,
that's what's happening.
I want to recapture that because it happens to be brilliant. Life brings us all these invitations. As why not step into them? So don't even think about it. When you see something, and I look at it as life has tons of opportunity. I love your perspective on invitations.
Yeah.
Every time, way too many of us are rushing through and we miss them.
Yes. Totally.
We're afraid to take them. There's the fear factor.
Mm-hmm.
And if we breathe and as we see these invitations, these opportunities, and we just keep saying yes, what's possible for us? And that's where brilliance is.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for highlighting that, because I totally agree with you. I think about one of the chapters in my book is called Say Yes to the Adventure. And it's funny because most of the book is all specifically around communication tips. The entire thing is a guidebook. But this chapter is about paying attention to what's happening around you. And I remember I was doing a training many years ago for that company that I worked for. And I was in Thailand, or no, I was going to be in Thailand, but I was in Malaysia. And here I was, a probably overeager American, shaking hands with this guy from Malaysia. And he tells me, well, I was in Malaysia, but he tells me he's from Bangkok. And I said, oh, great. You can show me around next week. And I start laughing. And he looked kind of oddly, off put, kind of, whoa. But then, and I realized, okay, slow your roll, Karen. I didn't say anything more. And then at the end of the day, he handed me a business card and he said, give me your flight information. I'm going to have my staff show you around. And he followed through. He said, okay, 6 a.m. I landed. He said, well, it's a little early to pick you up, but I'll have my driver come at 7. And then he'll take you to my office. And then his HR team took me in this van, and it sounds kind of scary, a white van, but they said, oh, I won't say his real name, but Mr. So-and-so has lots of money. He said to take you around and show you whatever you want. And one of those examples that day, which is a highlight of the whole day was magical. And he met up with me for lunch and dinner, and got a massage at the King's Palace. I mean, it was so unexpected.
Surreal. Surreal.
I know. But I would say that probably the most memorable thing of that entire day was when I was driving with these 2 young women that were taking me around, and they said, oh, they tell the driver, stop. Karen, have you ever ridden an elephant? Like it was commonplace,
in San Francisco, when you go down the street, don't you ride is that a cable car or an elephant?
I know. So I said, no. Well, they said, would you like to? I said, yes. So the driver turned around and they had me ride this elephant. And that experience to me is such a reminder of these moments when you never know what's going to happen. But if we don't stay open to what could be possible, then we're going to have our head down and doing the same thing we always do.
It's so true. And you threw something out there as a fun remark in that moment, and then opportunity appeared. And so I always think about, it's truly when we're connecting to people, because what you did is you sat and you were just having a connection with this gentleman. It wasn't about what company he owned or how wealthy he was or what he was able to do with you, but you were just connecting with an open heart and an open mind. And from there, what blossomed was an amazing invitation.
I know. So
opportunity and clearly life-changing moment for you.
Yes. Yes. It was a magical 24 hours. It was a layover. Then he dropped me back up at the airport at 8 p.m. and I went on to India.
The next flight. Okay. So 10 million. How are we tracking this? I'm a numbers geek,
Okay.
So
yes.
How do we do? How do you know? Right? Because it's so many people. Oh, I want to do blank, 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 and 100 million people, or 10 million people, or 1 million people, or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten to know you, this is not just a number you throw out there, and I cannot imagine how you're tracking this, to be very honest with you.
Sure. Well, I can tell you.
Absolutely. Please.
So first thing I want to say, so the mission is to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in 10 years. I liken it to one of the car dealers. I have to figure out which one. I think it might be Volvo, where their mission is no accidents. We know that is not going to happen. We know it's not. It's an aspirational goal. I still believe that I'm tracking this. So here's what I want to say. The aspirational goal is about the eradicating self-doubt. We're not going to totally eradicate it, but we're going to have tips and tools to be able to speak up and navigate it. And so the way that I'm measuring this to the best of my ability is through speaking engagements, press engagements, or press releases, I should say, how often it is covered, what is the reach of those places, and podcast interviews, my own podcast, books that have been sold, speaking engagements, corporate trainings, anything there where people have been basically, how should I put it? Because someone would have to work with me probably a pretty long time to really get to that point where they eradicate it, if that's even possible. But it's more of, what is the reach? Who has heard me speak? Yeah, that's how I'm measuring it.
So as we close, how can our listeners learn more about you, lean into your podcast, your message? Because I think it's the whole piece around confidence and self-doubt is so important to continue the conversation around.
Thank you. Well, I would say selfishly for people, I'm saying you all should be selfish who are listening to this and go to my website to get a freebie called 9 Words to Avoid and What to Say Instead. And that is, my website is Karen Laos, KarenLaos.com. And from there, you can find all of the resources, but I also have a YouTube channel with short videos that are also reels on Instagram. And my podcast is called Ignite Your Confidence. And every Tuesday night, for those of you on the East Coast, it all depends on your timing, but 8 p.m. Eastern for about 15 minutes every Tuesday night, I go live on Instagram for a show called The Confidence Corner. And that is another way that you can engage with me live if you would like. So that's a little bit of what's going on. Oh, and by the way, if anybody is part of a corporation, the 10 and 10 mission is actually a social initiative. So this recently launched and is very official that now we have corporate partnerships. So there are 3 ways to get involved, either as an individual, which can be totally complimentary, or there are 2 other ways to get involved that have an investment related to it.
Awesome. So listeners, what Karen is saying is reach out to Karen Laos at KarenLaos.com. And don't worry about the spelling. The links are in the show notes. Just click.
I love it. Thank you, Ivy.
Karen, thanks so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Listeners, as we continue with more great guests and more wonderful interviews, take a moment and take a breath. What did you get out of listening to today? What was the one thing that resonated with you? Write it down. Feel free to put it right in the show notes. And then create an action for yourself. What are you going to do about what resonated for you? Your takeaway, your aha moment. What is the action you're going to take? Karen and I chatted today about the importance of just those baby steps. It's all in the action, ladies and gentlemen. See you next time. Thank you for joining me here today at Her Success Story.